Star Trek Online announced a new ship bundle coming to the C-Store tonight, and if you've been playing Star Trek Online as long as I have, this one's going to be a bit of a nostalgia trip. Cryptic announced the Starfleet Flashbacks Bundle tonight, which includes a number of interesting items, including 3 new ships, a new costume, and some other items. What I'm going to do in this video is go over the contents of this bundle, so that includes everything that comes inside of it, and then I'm also going to go over the price and the release date. Then we'll take a closer look at the individual ships as well as the other items that come inside the bundle. The Starfleet Flashback Bundle is going to include 3 new ships. Those include the Tier 6 Augur Temporal Science Vessel, though that should be called the Temporal Deep Space Science Vessel, the Tier 6 Justiciar Command Star Cruiser, the Tier 6 Cyclone Intel Escort, that should be Patrol Escort, and also come with a 100% off Tier 6 coupon, so technically that's 4 ships, just 3 of them being new. Now, this is not a legendary bundle, so that means these 3 individual ships will be available individually on the C-Store for their normal C-Store price. The bundle will also come with 8 ship slots, so that's enough for all 3 of the new ships, their fleet versions, and any new ship that you pick up from the coupon, and then you'll have 1 slot left over because ship slots are always sold in pairs. It'll also come with 7 experimental ship upgrade tokens and 3 fleet modules. So again, that's enough experimental upgrades to upgrade the 3 individual ships, their fleet versions, and whatever ship you pick up with the 100% off coupon. Frankly though, that really feels like overkill, because no one's going to be upgrading the base versions of these ships if they have access to the fleet version. And if you are doing that, seriously, don't do that. That's just wasteful, because once you upgrade to the fleet version, no one goes back to using the normal C-Store version. Yes, I know upgrading to a fleet ship is on a per character basis, but at the same time, it's not like fleet ship modules are expensive. Plus, not to mention that you get 13 of them for free through the reputation system. Now, the last 3 pieces in the bundle, these are going to be exclusive to the bundle itself, so if you want these, you're going to have to buy the whole bundle. The first is the Starfleet 2387 uniform featured in the first season of Star Trek Picard. You can see the new costume in the image at the top of the article, but there is a better picture down if you scroll down a bit, and yeah, that is the flashback uniform from season 1 of Star Trek Picard, and man, I am so excited that this is finally making its way to the game. No joke, this is one of my favorite uniforms. So much so that I actually own one. I'd love to do the whole video in this thing, but this thing is warm. Oh my god. Okay, that's better. So yeah, this is the new costume that comes in the bundle. I know apparently in the Twitter announcement, Cal said something about this being the Season 3 uniform, and that caused some confusion because the Season 3 uniform is definitely different from this one, but yeah, this is the Season 1 uniform. The Season 3 uniform from Picard is not in this bundle. Fingers crossed that's in the next bundle, because I actually like that one even more than this one. The next thing included in this bundle is a set of TNG-era hand phasers. That includes the 2364 Type 1 phaser, the 2364 Type 2 phaser, that's the old Dustbuster, and the 2366 Type 2 phaser. That's the one they used in the mid to latter parts of the Next Generation. Now, these images were added after the initial announcement because, I mean, before you only got the this image up here, which is much smaller than these images down here. But if you also look at them, these don't look correct or even complete, these larger images. Like this one looks fine, but I mean, you're missing some color detail along this on this part of the phaser, particularly around the grip, and there's no lighting around the emitter, and this is just the completely wrong color. Someone did ask Cryptic about this, and Thomas Maroney responded that the image at the top of the article, so that's this one, this is the correct image, so don't worry about the lower ones and their inconsistencies. Apparently, I'm guessing that's just either in progress stuff, or maybe just the lighting was weird in the images. I don't know what the deal is there, but yeah, they should look like this, the way they should. There's also been a lot of question about whether or not these phasers are going to be account unlocks or single character unlocks, and I'm assuming they should be account unlocks because this is a C-Store bundle. Stuff is usually an account unlock in them, though there have been some exceptions, namely the Tommy gun in the Picard bundle. Though the Tommy gun is former event gear, so I think that was meant to be kind of a special case. Plus, not to mention the fact that, you know, everyone is constantly complaining about how that is a single character unlock, so I don't think that's a mistake Cryptic would make again. Because if they were to make it again, that would be incredibly foolish, because that would seriously undermine the value of this already very expensive bundle. Which that brings us to the next part of this announcement, the price. Oh wait, there's actually one more item in the bundle. It's a new title. It's called Old School, so if you want people to know you're old and inflexible and probably no fun to be around, there you go. You have a title to represent that. Anyway, the price. The base price of this bundle is going to be 12,500 Zen, so that is approximately 125 US dollars. Though, as usual with these sort of bundles, it will be marked down by 25% for the first 2 weeks of its release. So that is some math. Give me a second. So at 25% off, that's going to be 9,375 Zen. So rounding up a little bit, that is approximately 94 US dollars. And if you're charging that right from the site, I mean, that you can't charge $94 for Zen. So that's going to be, you're going to be spending $100 on this bundle, assuming you don't have some Zen saved up. Like I said, expensive bundles. So if those TNG phasers aren't account unlocks, then yeah, that's kind of a ripoff. But like I said, I don't think this is going to be a single character unlock because, one, it would be foolish for them to, but also look at past bundles like the New Genesis bundle that included the Wrath of Khan phaser, and that was an account unlock too. Same thing with the costumes in that bundle. Those were also account unlocks if you bought the bundle, so yeah, I think it's a safe assumption that these two are also going to be account unlocks if you buy the Starfleet Flashback Bundle. Okay, let's move down to what I'm sure most of you actually care about, the ships. Now, remember how I said at the beginning of the video that this is going to be a bit of a nostalgia trip if you've been playing STO as long as I have? Well, that's because all three of these ships are Tier 6 versions of the old Tier 5 ships from like STO's original launch era days. So that means this Augur Temporal Science Vessel is a Tier 6 version of the old Deep Space Science Vessel. The lore that they developed for this ship is actually kind of interesting because it kind of explains why the ship looks so different from most Starfleet ships, and the reason is that apparently it was either developed by or developed for purposes of the Department of Temporal Investigations. Now, because this thing is linked to the Department of Temporal Investigations, and because Temporal is literally in the name, you probably guessed that this is going to be a temporal ship with temporal seating. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. First, we gotta go for the hull modifier, which is a bit low, having only a 0.955 on the base version. The base C-Store version gets a little bit higher. For the fleet version, kind of the same story with the shield modifier, only slightly above standard on the C-Store version, a little bit better on the fleet version. It's got a 3-3 weapons layout, 3 device slots, pretty standard for a science ship. The bridge officer seating is a commander level science / temporal operative, an ensign level tactical, lieutenant commander level tactical, a lieutenant level engineering / temporal ops, and a lieutenant commander universal. In the consoles, it'll have 4 tactical, pretty high tactical for a science ship, 4 tactical, 1 engineering, then it'll get a second for the fleet version, and then 5 science consoles, which, yeah, should be expected. It's a science ship. It's going to have a turn rate of 15, an impulse modifier of 0.18, and an inertia rating of 60. So it's not going to be the fastest thing in the fleet, but it's not going to be, some big chunky ship. It's going to be a nice, mid-sized feeling ship. It's got plus 20 to aux power, which that's going to be really nice on a science ship. No hangar bays because it's not a multi-mission ship. It's got a secondary deflector slot and sensor analysis and subsystem targeting, all things you would expect to see on a science vessel. It's got the full temporal mechanic, again, something you would totally expect to see on a temporal ship, and then it's got the standard science vessel mastery package, which gives buffs to exotic damage, shield HP, healing, shield regeneration, and hardness, which only that first one is going to be useful. The rest of these are not good. Seriously, what do shields have to do with science? Now, I've got a quick question for you guys. Did any of these stats sound familiar? Does it sound like this has been done on a ship before? Because you're not crazy. They actually have. Someone pointed this out to me on Twitter earlier today, and yeah, so these are the stats for the Fleet Nautilus. This is a ship that was released in 2016, and it was released for the Agents of Yesteryear bundle, and yeah, its stats are shockingly similar to this thing. Look at this. The hull modifier is a bit lower, the shield modifier is quite a bit higher, the turn rate's a bit lower, the impulse modifier is higher, inertia rating is a little lower, but things get pretty much the same in the seating. Augur's got a little bit better in the power levels because it gets more aux power, but yeah, the seating, look at this, both have a lieutenant commander tactical seat, both have an ensign tactical seat, both have a lieutenant level engineering temporal ops seat, both have a commander level science temporal ops seat, both have a lieutenant commander universal seat. They're both full temporal ships, they're both science ships, so they both got the sensor analysis, they both got secondary deflectors, they both got subsystem targeting. Guys, these are nearly the same ship. Now, I really want to say I can't believe they've done this, but at the same time, they've totally done this before. Remember that one Romulan warbird from Strange New Worlds? What was it called? Yeah, here we go. The Praetor Command Warbird, and ooh, hold on, let me get the camera out of the way. Yeah, the Praetor Command Warbird. Yeah, perfectly good ship. It's a decent like battlecruiser type setup. It was, not a bad ship, except for the fact that they totally did this setup before. On the legendary Vorcha. Look at this. These are the same seating. It's ridiculous. Yeah, both are 5'3", both are battle cruisers, both have a battle cloak. The only difference, the only real difference between the two is that the Praetor uses a singularity core because it's a warbird, whereas the Vorcha uses a warp core. But that's kind of the only difference, aside from some of the values in the modifiers, which because they're both the same type of ship, they don't equate to much of a difference at all in really how the ship flies. You're never going to notice that kind of difference unless you're like going for super high-end stuff. And even then, odds are you're probably still not going to notice it. And they've done it again because the Augur is virtually identical to the Nautilus Temporal Science vessel. Now, before everyone starts getting all outragey in the comments, I'm not saying that Cryptic is purposely trying to resell you the same ship. I'm thinking that they just need to do a better job of kind of, proofreading through some of these stats because, think about how many ships there are in Star Trek Online, and think about even just the number of Tier 6 ships in Star Trek Online. There have been a lot of ships. Like, this ship is from 2016. That's a long time ago at this point. So yeah, I'm not saying they're doing this on purpose. I'm just saying someone needs to start proofreading this stuff a bit better because, yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. It's the same ship. Okay, let's look at the console and the trait. The console is called Enforced Timeline Primacy. So based on the description here, the console seems to work a lot like a secondary deflector, meaning it's going to be a passive ability instead of an active click ability. Any enemies that are being affected by energy drain, shield drain, secondary deflector effects, or temporal ops abilities will gain stacks of Enforced Timeline Primacy. After a short delay, these foes will receive damage in the form of radiation damage, and the amount of damage will depend on how many stacks that they have on them. Now, I'm assuming this is a passive ability because, it's compared to secondary deflectors. That's how secondary deflectors work. They just, you equip them and they go. So there's nothing to click. So I assume this console works the same way, given how they're being compared. Sadly, I haven't been able to see this thing in action, and I don't have any tooltip information for you because instead of doing a Star Trek Online stream tonight on 10 Forward Weekly, Cryptic instead decided to do a Neverwinter stream, despite the fact that they have a new ship bundle being announced tonight. Yeah. That doesn't make sense to me either. I don't follow Neverwinter, so I don't know what news is going on over there. I don't know if they had anything drop big this week or not, but seriously, this bi-weekly schedule for 10 Forward Weekly is killing me. Anyway, this console also features buffs to auxiliary and Starship exotic particle generator skills, which that's kind of exactly what you want on a science console, so that already sounds good. Plus, any entropy charges that are on dead foes will jump to nearby foes, which that's also kind of impressive. So yeah, for a temporal science vessel, this console is actually sounding pretty decent. Assuming I'm interpreting this console correctly, because again, there was no 10 Forward Weekly tonight. They streamed Neverwinter instead, so I could be completely wrong. Okay, maybe not completely wrong, because I can still read, but still, it's mildly inconvenient for me. Now, the Starship trait has an interesting mechanic where its effect will depend on what sort of specialization seating that you're using on the ship that you're using it on. In fact, all 3 ships will have traits with that similar mechanic. The one on the Augur is called Temporal Investigator, and when you use a Specialization Bridge Officer ability for the first time in an area or an ability of the same specialization, it has a chance to trigger an additional ability of that specialization. Those abilities that you will have a chance to trigger will include, for Pilot, Subspace Boom 1, Reinforcement Squadrons 1, for Intel it'll be Electromagnetic Pulse Probe 1, Subnucleonic Carrier Wave 1, and Ionic Turbulence 1, for Command, Call Emergency Artillery 1, Overwhelm Emitters 1, or Suppression Barrage 1. Temporal Ops, you'll have Chronometric Inversion Field 1, Heisenberg Amplifier 1, or Channel Deconstruction 1. And for Miracle Worker, you'll have a chance to trigger Deploy Gravitic Induction Platform 1, Destabilize Warp Core 1, or Overwhelm Power Regulators 1. Now, the trait sounds kind of interesting because it sounds like you'll be able to activate more Bridge Officer abilities with your Bridge Officer abilities, which sounds kind of cool, but again, because there was no 10 Forward Weekly, and because there's no tooltip information, I have some questions. I think one of the obvious ones is, are these extra abilities going to trigger any sort of shared cooldowns if I'm using these same abilities on my actual Bridge Officer tray? Like, say, if I'm using a temporal ship and I have Chronometric Inversion Field on it, if I trigger a Chronometric Inversion Field with this Starship trait using another Bridge Officer ability, will it trigger a shared cooldown on the actual Chronometric Inversion Field that I have on my Bridge Officer tray? I don't know, because there was no 10 Forward Weekly. I never got the chance to ask. So yeah, interesting Starship trait, but whether or not it's good or not is really going to depend on how it interacts with other Bridge Officer abilities, and right now we just don't know. So overall, the Augur is pretty decent ship. It's a double temporal ship, which is good for a science ship. It's reasonably high in tactical seating, which again, not a bad thing, even on a science ship. Though all the tactical seating does make me kind of wish it was a 4-2 weapons layout instead of a 3-3, but whatever. But I mean, the only real downside to this the ship's stats is that it's virtually identical to a totally different ship. So I mean, if you have the Nautilus, there's really not much motivation for you to get this ship, because if you like that ship, you're going to like this ship, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to do anything different on it. So what's the point beyond Space Barbie? Well, I guess the console, for one, because the console actually does sound pretty promising, because it basically buffs everything that you would want on an EPG, especially a temporal EPG build. Again, I wish I just knew how the console worked more, because, like I said, there was no Temporal Weekly tonight, so it's not like I got to listen to a description on how the console works, or, you know, ask any questions about it. It's just, all we have is this. This is it. So yeah, this has some promise, but again, it's hard to say without having seen it in action, without having heard about how it works, and without having our actual hands on it. Because even with the 10 Forward Weekly announcement and getting to see it in action, it's really hard to say how a console is actually going to perform until we actually get to test it out ourselves. So I guess I really can't fault the lack of a 10 Forward Weekly stream too much about not knowing about how this console is going to work. So in my opinion, it looks promising for science and EPG builds, particularly temporal builds. So if you like that sort of stuff, this might be worth pursuing. Now, the Starship trait, however, I'm not sold on this one. I mean, even not knowing how it interacts with other bridge officer abilities. And actually, that brings up another question. How do these extra abilities that get triggered, do these interact with certain personal traits? Because keep in mind, some of these are unconventional systems triggers, like ionic turbulence, chronometric conversion field. Like those will trigger unconventional systems. So will these triggered abilities through this trait, will those also trigger unconventional systems? Again, we don't know. So yeah, but yeah, even in that case, I really don't think this is gonna affect the meta all that much, if at all. It's a gimmick trait, that's what it feels like. So yeah, we'll see. So yeah, neat ship with some potentially neat stuff on it, but just the big bummer is that it is a virtual copy paste of the Nautilus. So if you already have the Nautilus, you're probably kind of annoyed, because this is nearly the exact same ship. Yeah, I still can't believe they did that. It's so classic. Okay, moving on, because I spent way too much time on the Augur. So the next ship is going to be the Justiciar Command Star Cruiser, and not gonna lie, I really like this ship, though that is largely just based on the look of this ship, because it's really pretty. I love these like flowing curves on the silhouette of the sort of the dorsal end of the ship. It looks so smooth, and actually kind of reminds me of, like, you know, how the Odyssey curves look, which makes sense because they are both Star Cruisers. It also really takes me back too, because like the old Star Cruiser is what I used to fly back in those really early days of the game. So this is a bit of a trip for me. Anyway, stats. So it's got a hull modifier of 1.36 and up to 1.5 with the fleet version. So very hull heavy on this ship. Whereas it has a pretty standard shield modifier. So very much going to be a hull tank. Even more so with a 4-4 weapons layout. This thing's very much lining up to be a tank. 4 device slots. The bridge officer seating is going to be an engineering command. It's a command ship, so yeah, definitely going to be well suited for a tank. Could be well suited for a torpedo build as well, but I feel like tank is kind of the idea that they're going for on this. So yeah, commander engineering / command, lieutenant commander tactical, ensign level science / command, though you're not going to get much use out of a lieutenant level command seat, an ensign level science seat, and a lieutenant commander universal seat. It has 3 tactical consoles, 5 engineering, and 2 science, which up to 3 with the fleet version. So if you've got the isomagnetic consoles, this is going to be a great candidate for those. It's got a base turn rate of 9, impulse modifier of 0.15, ooh, that's slow, and an inertia rating of 45. So this is going to handle like a pretty chunky cruiser, which not surprising given how big the old Star Cruisers are. So yeah, if you like big slow ships that feel like big chunky cruisers, yeah, this might be something for you. Otherwise, you're probably gonna hate this ship if you like, you know, something more fast and zippy. It's got plus 10 to weapons power, plus 10 to engine power, which is really going to need that extra engine power. New console, no hangar bays, which is not surprising. It's not a flight deck carrier or a dreadnought or a multi-mission ship. It's got the cruiser communication arrays. It's got all 4 of them because it's just a standard cruiser, so it will have the strategic maneuvering, weapon system efficiency, shield frequency modulation, and attract firepower. It will have the inspiration command ability because it is a full command ship, and it will have the standard cruiser mastery package, which is kind of the worst because it's nothing but tanking traits. So it's got kinetic and physical damage resistance, regeneration, that's hull regeneration, energy and radiation damage resistance, and maximum hull capacity. Now, as a 4-4 command ship, yeah, this is definitely going to be well suited as a tank, or even just like an off tank. Like, I'm already thinking about doing like a fire at will build on this thing, you know, broadside fire at will, because it is a 4-4 ship. So just beam arrays all over the place, plus a wide angle torpedo in the front, and then use something like suppression barrage to nerf enemy damage output, and concentrate firepower to help your torpedo or the torpedo of anyone else on your team. The console is kind of neat, but also sounds really gimmicky. It's called Micro Warp Shockwave. Activating this console initiates a micro warp jump to a targeted location. Upon arrival, the warp bubble collapses violently, dealing physical damage to nearby foes and disabling their weapon systems for a period of time. The damage done by the warp bubble additionally scales with your hull capacity of the ship that it's equipped to. The console will also have passives to hull capacity and damage resistance rating. So yeah, that really feeds into the whole off-tank idea. So you're going to be able to move around, deal a little bit of extra damage, but at the same time, you're also going to be able to disable enemy weapons. And the fact that this console can jump you to a targeted location makes me think that's really going to help with the very lack of maneuverability on this ship. So yeah, like I said, very gimmicky, very thematic. It's not something I would use in the high end, but I mean, it's going to be perfectly fine for advanced level content. So it could be just a fun toy to play with. The starship trait is called Specialist Gear, and like with the Augur, this is another one where the effect is going to be different depending on what sort of specialization seating that you're going to be using. With this trait, activating specialization abilities will trigger certain special effects depending on what sort of specialization those abilities are. So activating an Intel Bridge Officer ability will randomly disable one subsystem on whatever enemy you're targeting. If you activate a command ability, it will taunt that enemy. Activating a Temporal Ops ability, it will add a stack of entropy. Activating a Miracle Worker ability will drain all subsystem power from said enemy. And activating a Pilot ability will reduce the dodge chance of that enemy. If you activate one of these Specialization Bridge Officer abilities on a friendly target, the negative effect from the Starship trait will jump to the nearest enemy to that target. Again, this is another gimmicky trait, not something I would use in like the high end, but I mean, it'll do fine for advanced runs, especially if you're a more newer player or someone who's, you know, more on the free-to-play side that doesn't have a lot of Starship traits. This will do just fine. Though it may be actually decent for a tank build because, I mean, that's a guaranteed taunt to an enemy, and command is already good for a tank build, so maybe this could be decent for a tank. But honestly, at the same time, there are already so many good tanking Starship traits. It's like, what do you end up taking out? So overall, the Justiciar, it's an okay ship. Like, it's going to be large. It's going to be very tanky. I imagine a lot of people are going to be put off by the 4-4 weapons layout. Again, it doesn't bother me that much just because I really like broadside builds, but at the same time, broadside builds desperately need a buff of some kind because they don't hold up to forward-facing builds. That's kind of the whole problem with 4-4 builds to begin with, because broadsiders just don't keep up with forward-facing dual beam bank builds, or even more so with cannon builds. It'll make a decent torpedo build, but again, there are plenty of other ships that are also decent torpedo builds that are also 4-4 command ships. It doesn't take much to run a torpedo build as long as you have command seating, so yeah, it'll do it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to get this ship specifically for that purpose. Honestly, the only thing I find really appealing about the ship is the look of it. I like it for Space Barbie purposes, and that's honestly going to be enough for me for this ship, but that's not going to appeal to everyone. I also love the name too, Justiciar. Like, watch, you're going to be seeing a lot of people naming this thing the USS Samara or something else really Mass Effect-like. Okay, and the last ship from this bundle is the Cyclone Intel Patrol Escort. Wait, why'd they call it Patrol Escort here, but not over here in the first part of the blog? That makes no sense. Ugh, it doesn't matter. If I tried to explain everything that doesn't make sense in Cryptic's blogs, I would go insane. So anyway, the Cyclone. This is the Tier 6 version of the old Patrol Escort. Now, this Patrol Escort, I think, is definitely going to be the big favorite of this bundle, and you'll see why when I get to the stats. Down here you can see it's got a pretty low hull modifier, which makes sense because it is an Escort, and even lower shield modifier, so this is going to be a somewhat squishy ship. Definitely not something that's going to take much of a beating, but it is a 4-2 weapons layout with an experimental weapon slot, so definitely good for a forward-facing build, so something for like dual beam banks with beam overload, or you can run a cannon scatter volley on this thing. It's got 2 device slots, which not surprising for an Escort. That'll up to 3 if you upgraded the T6X. The bridge officer stations, it's got a commander tactical / intel, a lieutenant engineering / intel, a lieutenant commander science, an ensign science, and a lieutenant commander universal. All that intel seating, plus the fact that this is a full intel ship, means that this is going to be really nice for a surgical strikes build, but at the same time you don't have to go that route because it is an Escort with a full commander level tactical seat. You could go cannon scatter volley or even beam overload if you prefer. In the console slots, you've got 5 tactical, 1 engineering, but that ups to 2 with the fleet version, and 4 science console slots. So this is not going to be a great candidate for the isomagnetic consoles, that's the weapon power consoles, but so you're going to want to stick to the, the Spire consoles for crit chance and or severity. Of course, if you're running surgical strikes, you're going to want to stick to the Spire consoles anyway, because you're going to want that crit severity from the vulnerability exploiters. It's got a base turn rate of 17, impulse modifier of 0.23, and an inertia rating of 80, so this is going to be a rather fast maneuverable ship. It's got plus 15 to weapons power, plus 5 to engine, which that's also really nice. So that, you got weapons power to feed into your weapons, and a little bit of engine power that'll feed into Soliton Wave Impeller, and just help even more with your speed. It can equip dual cannons, which makes sense because it's an Escort. They gave this thing a battle cloak, which that's really nice. We've been seeing that more and more on certain Federation ships. It used to be back in the day they would never put a cloak, let alone a battle cloak, on a Federation ship, but they've been loosening up with that restriction a lot lately. It'll have the gather intel mechanic because it's a full intel ship, and it has the standard Escort Mastery package, which provides buffs to accuracy, defense, all damage, and crit chance. Now, you may have noticed something about these stats, or rather, a lack of something about these stats that has been on a previous version of the Patrol Escort. Now, the original Patrol Escort was just one of the ships that you would be able to obtain just through leveling up. But way back in 2014, Cryptic also released a refit version of the Patrol Escort called the Tempest. This one was a C-Store ship, so you can only get it through the C-Store, and it introduced a unique mechanic called the Tempest Tailgun. You see, the Tempest was a unique ship in that it was an Escort, but it had a 4-4 weapons layout. However, in that 4th weapon slot in the back, you had only one weapon that you could equip, and that was this Tempest Tailgun. You couldn't unequip it. This was the only thing that could be in that slot. The tailgun is effectively a phaser dual cannon, but it has the unique mechanic of being only equipped in your aft weapon slot. This is unusual for cannons because normally cannons can only be equipped in your forward weapon slots, the only exceptions being for turrets. Those can be equipped in any weapon slot, but that's also because they also have a 360-degree firing arc. This dual cannon only has a firing arc of 90 degrees, and that is why I hate this thing with a fiery passion. Seriously, an aft weapon that can only have a 90-degree firing arc, that is completely useless. I don't understand what the thinking behind this was, because it's not good. And honestly, it gets worse beyond that, because this thing also has a unique proc on it that will randomly give it rapid fire 1. So not only could you only shoot ships that were behind you, which is exactly where you don't want ships when you're flying an Escort, but at the same time, this thing, it would also screw with your firing modes because it had its own firing mode proc. So if you're using scatter volley and this thing triggers, it'll just override it with rapid fire 1. That's horrible. It also has the arc mod because of the unique firing position it's in, so you're actually losing out on 2 damage modifiers. This thing is terrible. Seriously, I never understood why anyone thought this was a cool thing, because it's so bad. I've seen a number of people complaining about how the new T6 version of the Patrol Escort does not have the tailgun feature, but I'm not one of them. I am glad this thing is dead. I'm glad it dies with the Tempest. The T6 version does not need it. Frankly, the Tier 5 version didn't need it. It was a stupid mechanic. It was stupid then. It's even more stupid now. Let it die. And that's coming from a guy who likes to put nothing but turrets on ships. Now, if the tailgun was omnidirectional, I might actually... No, I would still hate it because of the rapid fire mod, so yeah. Nope, still a bad idea. Glad it's dead. The console on this ship is called Sensor Phantom Projector. What this console does is when it's activated, it will create a sensor phantom on the far side of the enemy that is affected, which I'm assuming that is the far side is whatever side is the furthest from you. When it's activated, the enemy will turn toward that sensor phantom. Basically, the phantom is getting its attention, and it will turn away from you to the phantom, basically exposing its flank to you, meaning you'll be able to benefit more from flanking damage. While this console is active, the bonus it provides to flanking damage is dramatically increased. I'd love to know just by how much, but again, there was no 10 Forward Weekly tonight, so I don't know, could be a little, could be a lot, who knows. That said, as long as this extra flanking damage also stacks with Raider flanking and space flanking from the Intel's Captain specialization, this has the potential to be a really nice console that could, that's using something like a single target build like Surgical Strikes. Even more benefit for Surgical Strikes because this thing gives passive buffs to crit severity and directed energy damage. So yeah, a lot of promise there for single target builds like Surgical Strikes or even Beam Overload. The Cyclone will also include a new experimental weapon called the Gull-type Psionic Resonator, which, if you remember that episode of TNG where Picard becomes an archaeologist space smuggler by accident, yeah, it's the Stone of Gull. Derived from secret data retained about an ancient Vulcan weapon, the Psionic Resonator's energies are too diffused to permanently harm the crew of the target vessel. Instead, it amplifies their violent urges, causing them to act out against their own equipment. The ship's own impulse drives amplify this effect tremendously, causing the weapon to deal massively increased damage when used in flanking strikes. So, from this description, it sounds like we're finally getting a space weapon that deals psionic damage in the form of this experimental weapon. It is a little funny that the first thing that deals psionic damage in space is going to be an experimental weapon, because when the Monavine was announced, that's when the idea of psionic space weapons was being introduced. And, yeah, the Monavine is a battlecruiser. It can't use an experimental weapon. Though, that said, there's nothing to say you can't use that starship trait or that console with this experimental weapon, so you could at least use those pieces. But yeah, it still amuses me. I do like the fact that it deals increased damage against flanking strikes. That kind of seems to be the whole theme behind this ship, is that it's meant to exploit flanking damage, which at the same time is kind of weird because the ship isn't a raider, so it doesn't have flanking. It doesn't have raider flanking, which would also exploit all of that those flanking strikes. But again, there's no reason you can't use this stuff on a raider. But yeah, why didn't they just make it a raider? Because they're clearly going for a theme here. Anyway, so without any tooltip information, I can't really say anything more about the experimental weapon. I don't know what its recharge time is. I don't know if it affects a single enemy, or if it's an AoE attack, or if it just affects multiple enemies. Who knows? Regardless of having a full detail on its stats, I will be very surprised if this thing manages to outperform Soliton Wave Impeller. Okay, and for the last piece about the Cyclone, the Starship trait Adaptive Tactical Algorithms, which again, you're going to notice a theme here. You're going to have different effects based on what sort of bridge officer specialization seating that you're going to be activating. Though this is by far the best Starship trait of the three ships, because no matter which one you do, all of them are going to be damage buffs, no matter what you do, so that's nice. Intel abilities will trigger an increase in damage and a bonus flanking damage buff. Command will greatly increase damage, but again, that's still going to be Cat 1, as well as hull capacity. Temporal ops abilities will increase damage and exotic particle generation. Miracle Worker abilities will increase damage and reduce weapons power cost. That will be nice for an energy weapon build. And pilot abilities will increase damage and stacking max engine power. It certainly sounds interesting, but again, without seeing any actual tooltip information, there's no numbers at all. We have no idea what these values of these buffs are going to be, so there's no way to determine just how useful the Starship trait is going to be. So I don't know. Could be neat, could be crap. Who knows? We'll find out. At best, I would say this is going to be a decent budget trait for if you don't have like some of the more high-end damage traits, but that's about it as far as I can tell. The ones that stick out the most to me are the Temporal Ops and the Miracle Worker versions. Reducing weapons power cost is always valuable, and if you have the isomagnetic consoles, that's going to be even more valuable because, you're just going to have that much more weapons power left over to be increasing the damage of your weapons. And the exotic particle generation for the Temporal Ops stuff, that's going to be good for science stuff, potentially, because exotic particle generation, that's what science is all about. And, yeah, that could be useful. But again, it's going to depend on how much EPG it actually gives. because of how little information that we've gotten through all these, I might do a second video showing off the tooltips of all these consoles and traits when they actually come out, because right now it just, I know it's a first impressions video, but it feels so half-hearted because of how little information I have. So overall, the Cyclone, I like this one. Honestly, I feel like this is going to be the most popular ship out of this bundle, just because it's very straightforward, very weapons-based. I feel like this is going to be pretty popular with most of the player base. The Patrol Escort still also has its fans, so I mean, Space Barbie-wise, I feel like that's going to be pretty popular too. So yeah, good ship, good stats. Interesting console trait. It's nothing that's going to be meta breaking, in my opinion. We'll see how it performs. They both show promise, but we'll see. Again, it's hard to say without any actual information on the tooltips about what the values of these buffs actually are. And now for the big question, is this bundle actually worth picking up? And honestly, I don't know if I'd say yes to that. Because, for one, all three of these ships are going to be available individually, because this isn't a legendary bundle, so if you like one or two but don't like all three of them, you have the option to just pick up the ones you like. Ultimately, the real appeal for the actual bundle itself is just going to be the extra add-on stuff, which is going to be the TNG phasers and the Star Trek Picard Season 1 uniforms. And in the end, that's just ground Space Barbie. There is no additional information on the hand phasers. We don't know if they have any unique procs, any unique mechanics. We don't even know what sort of attacks they have, which ones are wide beam, which ones are stun, if they have any other unique firing modes that we've never seen before or that just aren't commonly used on pistols like this. No idea. Honestly, it's really stupid of them to leave that sort of information out, because that is going to be a deciding factor for a lot of people on whether or not this bundle is going to be worth it. I know it would be for me. And as for the uniform, that's entirely cosmetic, so if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's on you. And then there's the extra fluff that they put in to kind of pad the price that no one ever really seems to want. You know, the ship slots, the experimental upgrade tokens, which are so easy to get. It's so dumb that they keep including these in such high numbers. Yeah, we don't need 7 of these. Like 3 is fine, maybe 4 for the coupon, but no one is upgrading both the base version and the fleet version. That's ridiculous. Yes, you could counter the argument that both the experimental upgrades and even the coupon they're not bound. You should be able to sell those, which, yeah, that's nice. You'll have some extra EC if you want it, or you'll be able to just use them if you want them, but it's still extra fluff that is just driving up the price of this thing, and that's the really frustrating part, because that pushes the bundle further and further out of the hands of the average player, because $100 is not an insignificant amount of money. That is expensive, especially when you consider the fact that most people are only going to care about the individual ships. They're not going to care about the extra stuff that they put in here, because this is, while it might be convenient for some people, it's not going to be convenient for most. So yeah, that's like, this extra fluff is just annoying, and no one cares about titles, seriously. And then the TNG phasers, that's just to drive people, because this is something we've been asking for a while, is more cannon style ground weapons. I mean, I have a whole video on cannon style ground weapons that still aren't in the game, and these were on that list, and now they're going to be in the game, but they're going to be behind a $100 paywall. So I guess the real question is, how much are the TNG Space Barbie or the Star Trek Picard Space Barbie worth it to you? Because that's kind of the only incentive to buying the bundle. And I don't think that's going to be much incentive for most people. Frankly, I think most people are going to be attracted to either 1 or 2 of the ships. Like I said, I think most people are going to be into the Patrol Escort, even though it doesn't have the tail gun. That's a good thing. The tail gun was stupid. But yeah, this is going to be just a very, very straightforward escort with an emphasis on flanking damage. So you get that bit of strategy in mind, which frankly you should already be doing that because of the space flanking ability on the captain specialization for intel. So yeah, that's just going to further feed into that, which that's going to be kind of nice. The Justiciar is pure Space Barbie. I love the look of it, but yeah, stats-wise, I don't think a lot of people are going to be super into it. And the Augur, that was... yeah, finding out that thing has virtually identical stats to a ship from 2016 is just hilarious and disappointing all at the same time. Yeah, if you don't have the Nautilus, sure, go after it. But if you do have the Nautilus, you're probably going to be pretty annoyed about that. But again, Space Barbie is always a factor. So again, if you like the look of the Augur, then just get it on that factor alone, because overall, it is still a good science ship. So, can't fault it for that, I guess. As for what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to buy the bundle. I really want those uniforms, and I really want those ground weapons, and yeah, Cryptic has played me for the sucker I am, because I am going to pay way too much money for this bundle that really isn't worth the $100 that they're going to be charging for it. But I'm going to do it, because I'm a sucker. But I imagine a lot of people aren't going to be swayed by the little extras in this bundle, and they're just going to find it to be far too expensive and instead go with one or maybe two of the ships instead. And you know what? Good for you. That's probably exactly what you should do, is just pick one you like and then go with it, and not even bother with the rest of this really overpriced bundle, because that's what it is. It is an overpriced bundle because they filled it with way too much fluff that no one gives a crap about. There's too many experimental upgrades in there, and no one cares about the T6X coupon. You're literally just tacking on the price of another ship into the bundle just to make it more expensive, and that's really annoying. All that added onto the annoyance of how little information we got about this bundle, because again, there was no 10-4 weekly tonight, so we have no tooltip information on any of the consoles or traits for any of these ships, and we still have no info on any of these hand phasers. Like I said, they could have unique procs or unique mechanics or unique anything, or they could just be standard phasers. Who knows? Because it's not in the blog. Before we wrap up, I want to do one last comparison with another ship bundle. This is the Federation Responders Bundle, and this is another 3-ship bundle that was released around the same time last year. So it's the same sort of bundle that's released around this time of year, so I wanted to compare it to see what its value is in comparison to what we're getting in the new Flashback Bundle. The Federation Responders Bundle included 3 ships, which was the Bozeman Intel Heavy Frigate, the Cabot Command Light Escort, and the Nobel Miracle Worker Research Vessel. The Bozeman and the Cabot I really liked. Those were solid ships, but the Nobel, that thing's crap. Miracle Worker and Science don't mix very well together. Overall, though, the exact stats of each ships are pretty comparable to what we're getting in the Federation Responders Bundle. The Bozeman, that had double intel seating, the Cabot had double command, and the Nobel had double Miracle Worker, so it's on par with what we're getting this year. The extra stuff included with the Federation Responders Bundle was first a 100% off coupon, which is bound to account. That's not good. Does that mean this is going to be bound to your account in this bundle too? Because if so, that's rude, to put it lightly. Oh, I'm saying it right now. If I can't sell that coupon in the Flashback Bundle, I'm going to be really upset about that. This one also included 6 experimental upgrade tokens, 6 promo ship slots. Oh, there's just ship slots. They're promotional because they're available in a unique way. But yeah, there were 6 ship slots and 3 fleet ship modules. All that for the price of 12,000 Zen, and it was discounted on its release for 9,000 Zen. So while the Federation Responders Bundle is a bit less expensive than the upcoming Flashback Bundle, you are getting more with the Flashback Bundle, because this upcoming bundle, I mean, there was no costume in last year's bundle or any unique ground weapons in last year's bundle. We're also getting additional ship slots and an additional upgrade token. So really, I would argue that, compared to last year's bundle, that the Flashback Bundle is just as good a value, if not even slightly better. Yeah, it is a little more expensive, but you are getting more stuff in the bundle, and frankly, comparatively, the prices aren't that much different from each other. But if we're just talking individually, I mean, we are still talking about a nearly $100 bundle, and as I said earlier, that is not an insignificant amount of money. Oh, you know what? This also had another bundle exclusive, because they also had those Mirror Universe skins. You could only get the Mirror Universe skins if you bought the bundle, so technically, yeah, you could call that a costume. Okay, so taking the Terran costumes into account, yeah, I'd still say the Flashback Bundle is a little bit more of a value, but at the same time you are being charged a little bit more, so honestly, I'd call it even at that point. I actually remember last year when I was reviewing this bundle, I was pretty meh about the whole thing, because I only cared about the 2 ships. I didn't care about the Terran skins, and the rest of the stuff. Like I said, it's just fluff. I didn't care about any of it, and I was fully prepared to only buy 2 of the ships, the Bozeman and the Cabot. And the only reason I ended up buying the full bundle is because my buddy Q dropped a $50 super thanks on the video. So I was like, all right, I guess I have to now. So yeah, I'd say it's on par with what we got last year. It's a little bit more expensive, but they're also throwing in a little bit more into the bundle. But at the same time, that's kind of the whole issue I feel like a lot of people are having with these bundles. They're just getting so big and so unaffordable. It's like, you know, it's just pushing them out of the price point of most players more and more, and it's going to lead to people buying less overall. Because again, it's not like the ships will be bound to the bundle itself. You'll be able to get any of the three individually, so why bother with the bundle at that point when you can just get the one you like? So yeah, that is the Federation Flashback Bundle. It looks kind of neat, but again, I wish we had more information on what was inside, because there's no tooltip information and we didn't get a 10-4 weekly this week, so yeah, who knows? I definitely think most people are going to opt for getting, you know, just one ship out of the bundle instead of getting the whole thing itself, because again, the bundle's expensive. That's you know, that's nearly $100 for, you know, 3 ships and a lot of fluff that most people aren't going to care about. You know, mainly the experimental upgrade tokens. It comes with more of those than it needs, and the T6 ship coupon. Like, especially if that can't be traded, because if that can't be traded, that's, I mean, what's the point of a ship coupon at that point? The whole point of the T6 ship coupons was to be able to gift them to people, so you could basically, you know, gift your friend a ship. But if you can't gift the coupon to anyone, what's the point of the coupon then? So yeah, let me know what you guys think of this bundle down below in the comments. Are you excited and planning to get the whole thing, or are you just wanting to get 1 or 2 of the ships, or are you really upset about the bundle, mainly because, you know, the costumes and the phasers that are being restricted to the bundle? Because you know, we all know how important Space Barbie is in Star Trek Online, and limiting Space Barbie like this behind massive paywalls, I imagine, is going to upset a lot of people. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you'd like to further support the channel, you can hit that join button to become a member, or you can hit the super thanks button, or you can find the link to the merch store in the video's description. The Epic Game Store is having their summer sale right now, so a bunch of games are 25% off, including Star Trek Resurgence. So if you haven't picked that up already, you should go over there and get that, because Star Trek Resurgence was a ton of fun, because, you know, Star Trek. Maybe you can pick that up if you're not into any of these ships. Just remember to use my creator code STU1701. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does help me out, and I really do appreciate it. That is creator code STU1701. But either way, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.